Great, I think we're live. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining our third breakfast briefing of the series, and on an absolutely outstandingly beautiful Lincolnshire day. So it's fantastic. Just talking to Ed on the backstage, and he's just commenting, it's great weather because it's good to see the wheels turning. And I thought that was just a good comment. So thanks, Ed, for that. So today we've got, I think, again, another fantastic lineup. And the theme today is land management opportunities next 5 years. And I'm really pleased to introduce Isabel Wright, who many of you know, who's a long-serving member of the university staff, I think, Isabel, but a real thought leader and pioneer in sort of agriculture and improving environmental practices. So, and Isabel's been thinking about these things for 20 years. Many of you know Isabel, an absolute thought leader in the county. We're really proud to have her on the team. And actually, I think with the direction of travel of agriculture, all of the things that Isabel's been thinking about for the last 20 years are really now coming to. So it's a wonderful moment as we transition to new agriculture systems. And we're really proud to introduce Ed Ford, who's going to give us an overview of the net zero work at Beeswax Dyson. Ed's technical agronomist, and again, leading agriculture company in Lincolnshire and in the UK, probably globally. And it's great to sort of see Ed sort of talking about some of the things that's going on at Beeswax Dyson. I mean, we know it's a pretty exciting space, so that's going to be interesting for everybody. And then the brilliant Tammy Smalley from Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, who's been leading on a number of projects, ELMS projects in the county. So 2 very big nationally important projects, which are just about to get going at full scale. Tammy's going to give us an overview of what's going on there. So I think we've got a brilliant lineup today. And then just a really quick update before we start. Things at Rhizome again. We're going at a terrific pace. I think I mentioned last time that the old hall's now pretty much done. Officially opens in March, but subject to COVID, we'll be back in soon. That is spectacular and a real movement. The animal buildings, which are co-invested with the college, which is the roundhouse, the cattle, a precision engineering shed with the college, and an upgrade to the lambing shed. That's all been done, and they're all operational, and they look fantastic again. So I think really can't wait to invite everybody who's on this call over to the next physical meeting, probably next autumn, just to show you the new facilities and just show you what's going on. It really is starting to take shape, and then some really good new projects. We're starting to move into some new projects around electric motors for electric vehicles for agriculture. We've got a couple of really exciting new projects on self-propelled sprayers and using AI. Our 5G equipment arrives next month, so that's lots of great research going on. And then the education's going well. We're just launching a level 6 professional practice program for agriculture and horticulture advisors. So I think we're going to post that in the chat if anyone's interested in that. And then the AgTech Accelerator Eagle Labs going at pace. We've got about a dozen companies already signed up to that. So starting to see that flow through, hopefully from research through to industry. So lots going on. So please keep in touch. And honestly, I can't wait to invite everybody physically so we can have that much needed bacon sandwich and sausage roll. So that's where we are. Without further ado, now I'm going to hand over to Isabel, and she's going to give an intro on planning our future farming landscapes, what we know so far. So, Isabel, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, beautiful day. I've just had 10 minutes where I just want to set the scene before our 2 main speakers. But I think the scene we have ahead of us is a very exciting one. There are a lot of opportunities. I really think we're going to feel very proud of what we're doing, and we have to move quite fast and plan. So I just want to talk about some of those things. Very quickly, you will have seen this slide. This main green bar is the degree to which the population is growing at the moment. This line between the dark green and the light green, 2019. And so we often see that the population is going to grow to 11 billion, 10.9 billion by 2100. But I did, out of interest, just plot what was going to happen in the next 10 years. So actually from 2019 to 2030. And the forecast for 9 years' time now is 8.5 billion. And compared to where we were just last year, that's a 10% increase in global population, a 10% increase in global population just in the next 10 years. So I think, we've got a rapid change in population. We're not going to be responsible for feeding all of those people. We're already very, very efficient in our food production, but it does just show how fast the population is growing. And alongside that, of course, a climate crisis that's coming at us like a train. And I think the lesson for me for that is plan for that and have a really resilient multi-income farming business. And then the biodiversity crisis that we should all be attending to. It's everybody's business, but as land managers, we've got a great opportunity there. And then, of course, we've got some things that are already changing, like the basic payment scheme. So I'd like to show you some of the what DEFRA is already telling us. So first of all, the drivers for our diverse income stream. So first of all, basic payment scheme. We already know what's going to happen through to 2024, and that is a declining payment each year. It starts this year, so this year we'll have a smaller payment, and the payments are based on, it's a bit like income tax. The first tranche is in 2021, the first 30,000 will be reduced by 5%. The second amount up to 50,000 will be reduced by 20%. So these larger payments are not totally cut at 25%. It's a sliding scale. And then that will decline in subsequent years through to 2024. There's still a consultation for what happens after that. But there's a possibility of a lump sum payment that would cover the time through to 2027, and a possibility of an exit scheme for farmers that might start earlier, but based on a lump sum. But that's still out for consultation at the moment. Cross compliance is being streamlined, so we already know that greening has gone, but we know that inspections are going to be more pragmatic and based on what's seen in the field, and things like the livestock identification systems. The three current systems, like BCMS and EAML, are being streamlined into one bigger system, livestock information system. So we know that we've got some decline in payment for a lot of growers, including in Lincolnshire, where we've got 20% of the food production, really good yields. We're still very dependent on that basic payment scheme. So starting soon, we'll have the sustainable farming incentive, and Tammy is going to talk about that. But for me, all this means that food production is going to be, in Lincolnshire certainly, is going to be at the heart of most farms, but it's likely to be greener and smarter. And lots of the new technology of the kind that Simon just described and that we're working on at Lincoln will be part of that piece. So that's basic payment scheme and farming. Countryside stewardship. Countryside stewardship is still running. There hasn't been massive take-up of the existing scheme, but applications can continue right through till schemes that start in 2024. So applications can be made in 2021, 2022 and 2023. So that will be the last application date for a scheme starting in 2024. And there's no penalty for transferring to the new scheme if farmers feel that it's better to be in the new scheme than the old. So it seems to me that it's pretty important to look at that for this coming year and see whether countryside stewardship suits a farm. It isn't whole farm, it can be parts of the farm, and there are some simple entry routes compared to the difficulty we've had in some previous years. And then this last one on this slide, ELM, Environmental Land Management. We were calling it NELMS, the new new environmental land management scheme, then ELMS, but I believe it's got to be called ELM now. So this is the post-Brexit environmental land management scheme that we'll be running. It starts in 2024. It's in 3 tiers, and the first tier, Tammy will explain more, but I think the first tier is very like SFI and will start sooner. So you could wait for ELM, but I wouldn't be waiting for ELM. I would be seeing what's out there in the trials and tests that are going on now. And there are opportunities to actually engage with the scheme straight away. ELM. Then excitingly, DEFRA is putting aside some of this money that it's not been paying through BPS into grants and support which allows us to have more diverse income streams. So farm resilience advice is going to be available from sometime this year. And so I believe that's a suite of advice schemes to support farmers make difficult decisions if those are required. A farming investment fund is due late this year, which will fund things like equipment and technology and infrastructure, like processing opportunities or robotic automation or storage or reservoirs for irrigation. And alongside that, an innovation research and development scheme. We don't know too much about that at the moment. And for anybody with animals, a slurry investment scheme. It's called slurry investment, but I think it's for slurry storage, not for investing in slurry. And then alongside that, for us as a university, we're looking very hard at the transforming food production thread, which has started now, where we're looking at innovative pathways and rapid transfer of those into practical activity on farm. And so as a university, we're looking very carefully at that. The university is also part of SOS, a student plan that was just approved this week or the end of last week, where there's a student movement looking at the climate change and the impacts we can make on agricultural farms where there's a farm associated with a college or a university. So that's just starting for us, which is great. If you're interested in following the changes from DEFRA, you can sign up to e-alerts. And that's the link if you need it. So the other strand, those look like quite conventional funding streams that we're familiar with, but more diverse income streams are things like blending funding from private equity, private funding, public companies that are not DEFRA. And I think they fall into 2 main groups, the carbon groups and the biodiversity net gain. So to me, well, this is the most exciting thing. Agriculture really is the only industry that can contribute to a net zero in a really, really positive way because we can capture carbon. So Ed's going to talk in a few moments about capturing carbon on farm and working towards the net zero aspiration that we have for farming for 2040, which also feels like it's just around the corner. And regenerative agriculture may offer many benefits for that. So Ed will expand on what they've been doing at Dyson. The second angle to this is trading carbon in some way, so offsetting somebody else's carbon sin. So an airline company or a hotel chain might be willing to offset their carbon emissions by purchasing carbon sequestration on farms. And that's been developed for woodland, and we're becoming exciting that that's going to develop for farmland in some way, and it is developing in some countries. And then the next one is biodiversity net gain on a large scale, creating a habitat bank, but on a smaller scale, providing biodiversity units. The Environment Bill, when it's signed off, includes within it this principle of biodiversity net gain, so that if a developer wants to create houses on a field where there will be some biodiversity that's going to be lost, there's a process by which that organisation has to look at the number of biodiversity units that are going to be lost and then add 10% and pay for that loss, including the 10%, for it to be placed elsewhere. And there's a biodiversity metric calculation that's used for that. DEFRA are about to introduce metric version 3 that basically looks at the areas lost: woodland, hedgerows, water and species, and does the calculation to see how many units are being lost. And so if I was farming, I would be looking very hard, and this map in the background actually is the Rise Home farm, plus a bit of our neighbour's farm. I'm beginning to map what the assets might be so that we can start to understand where we might be able to improve those assets using public and external money. And lastly, we still have diversification, as we have done for many years. But what's interesting is that the pandemic, lots of people will say the pandemic seems to have improved the attitude of people towards their food. I've never seen so many Twitter feeds of sourdough production, but towards food and the countryside. That hasn't always been successful, the access to the countryside, because if you don't own the right footwear, it's very difficult to follow a narrow footpath in muddy conditions. And so I've seen some pretty trashed footpaths, and the approach to litter has not been great. Nevertheless, we've got a great opportunity here to explore how we might help with social and mental and physical well-being, and we have an opportunity to really cash in on the staycations, the thirst for outdoor life and local food and so on. So I hope that's given you a taste. I couldn't be more excited. I think that sustainable farming and regenerative agriculture is going to continue, of course, to be at the heart of Lincolnshire farming, but it will look a little bit greener, and there will be opportunities to add technology, things like vertical farming, regenerative agriculture, accessing a greener countryside with more. There will be more trees in it, in whether it's agroforestry or trees in hedgerows or new blocks of woodland, technology helping us a healthier soil. And so I think we've got a great chance to be really proud of what we're doing. And so, yeah, thank you. That's the end of my presentation. Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Liz. That's fantastic. I'll just ask if anyone's got any questions, please post them in the chat, and then I'll be able to sort of relate them to the presenters. I mean, I've got a question. It might sound a bit like an exam question. It's a bit of a stinky one, so I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
So, what do you think is a resilient farm business given climate change and change in agricultural policies in the next 5 years? What makes resilient? That word resilience is used a lot, but what's it really mean?
Yes. For me, it means not all our eggs in one basket. So multiple income streams, so that if there is something unexpected that affects one enterprise, other enterprises are safer. And you can imagine tourism industries. If you were running a hotel, you would say you didn't have a resilient business in the last year because a pandemic has hit it hard. So multiple sources of income. And then for the farm itself, it's regenerative agriculture is the word that people use, but protecting our soils from climate change and water and air and buildings from climate change is absolutely crucial. So making sure how I will be preparing at the moment is creating maps, because we think these might well be needed in ELM, but starting to look field by field at where the best areas are for food production and what the best uses are for other parts of the farm, so that we can prepare for this resilient multiple income future. I heard a speaker at the GLNP conference, the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership Conference this week, talking about the fact that they just in their regenerative agriculture area, they just farm in rectangles. So they've chosen the best part of the field, and they're absolutely efficient, really efficient, intensive in that central area, and then looking at other sources of income around the edges.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we're going to see. So if you go in your TARDIS in 20 years' time, you're telling me you're going to see lots of rectangles? No.
Could be with farming in the right place. Farming in the right place, and the rectangles might have stripes on them. You never know. They might have a bit of agroforestry on them.
No, I think we're going to see some dramatic landscape changes, aren't we? It's what's what's kind of really exciting me is these sort of are the big landscape opportunities, and it will be farming within a different landscape. So there will be productive farming going on, but many other things around, and that's hard to predict, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think what's so wonderful, we can be proud of what we're doing, because other people are, we've always done hedge cutting, farming has always done a lot of these ecosystem services, and this time we're going to be rewarded and recognized and championed for them, because we are the solution to a lot of the climate change challenges.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no, I agree. It's fantastic. All right, I'm going to move over to Ed. There's a couple of questions coming into the chat, which I might just leave until a bit later, right? If anybody who's posted them in. So Paul, Alan, and Sean have come in, because I think they're good general points of the whole panel. So without further ado, thank you. That was a great intro, and it set the scene beautifully for Ed. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Ed. So road to net zero and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, I'm just going to give a practical application of how Beeswax Dyson have taken the whole carbon journey and where we are currently and what we're doing going forward. So it's to work. There we go, cool. So we're going to just chat for about 20-25 minutes. We're going to go through the key drivers, which all of you probably know about, where we started and just a bit of advice on that. Then bringing all the results together, and then the big question, so what have we done with that information and how do we plan to evolve on it, and then the time for questions at the end. So key drivers, again, all of this will be common knowledge to yourself, but climate change, by far the biggest thing that's making this green evolution happen. It's driving legislation, country and government-wise, so the UK becoming the first major economy to make it law to be net zero by 2050. And then the new agricultural bill, which again is designed to be a lot more greener and based around the environment. Farmers being paid for environmental enhancements. And then the national targets of set by the NFU for achieving net zero by 2040, which personally I believe, like as he said, that as farmers, we're in a great position to do this, and I think it's by far achievable. And then business opportunities as well for us. This is how we actually started looking at our carbon footprint. We had a direct supply opportunity with a Molten Barley contract. They wanted to know what our footprint was. So it's opportunities like direct supply, public money for public goods, and then also markets for carbon. So where to start? It's probably one of the biggest questions I get asked when talking about this, is like where to begin, because it is a minefield and there's no ifs, buts, and maybes about it. It is tricky to start with. It can be quite daunting. There's multiple tools out there, but for my advice at this moment in time, it doesn't matter which tool you use. It's all about you as a business understanding what tool works best for you, because in essence, they all give you the same result. Yes, methodology changes, but at this moment in time, without a baseline tool to use, the biggest thing is actually just getting a result to understand where you are. So we as a business, we decided to go with Cool Farm Tool purely because at the time it was the only tool that allowed us to focus in on one specific crop for that direct supply opportunity. We established our own methodology. We knew that we weren't able to benchmark because you're basically comparing apples with pears just with carbon tools at the moment, because the results can be varied depending which tool you use. So we knew that we were only going to base it on our results. We drew a line in the sand for the year that we were going to go for. And we understood that we're going to do livestock, we're going to do from seed to farm gate. Anything else after that, we weren't going to record. And then data collection as well is the biggest part of it, and probably the most daunting place to start, because if you've got so much data lying about, it's how you get all that into place. So it's all about using technology out there, so farm management tools such as Gatekeeper, Muddy Boots. 95% of the information you need to complete a carbon footprint tool is in that information, so it's all about getting it in one place and being able to understand, and then also understanding what you've got, which I'll go on to in a little bit in a minute, about like the natural capital on the ground, woodland, trees, hedgerows. Just finding that starting point is the key place, because once you've got your foundations, year after year it becomes a lot easier, because you know where you're at and you know what kind of rules you're following. And then allocating resource as well. This is a timely exercise. There's no doubt about it. So it's all about putting the effort into the results, making sure the data is right, it's reliable, it's consistent. It's really, really crucial within this. So it's not something to be taken really very lightly. So this slide just gives you an overview of the footprint so far for beeswax over the last 3 years. 2018 and 19 were retrospective analyses by that. So the data was already set. We didn't really have any impact. It is what it is, because that's the results. But 2020, the results were kind of influenced by the effects of the results we found from 2018 and 19. So we could start seeing some improvements from what we're doing on the ground. And by those results, basically, we identified 3 main areas for our emissions: were inorganic nitrogen, fuel consumption, and cultivations. So it's allowed us to focus on the 3 core pillars that we think that we could address with emissions wise, and I'll go into a bit more on that as well. And then with the sequestration, again, this is where understanding what you have is crucial, because especially when it comes to the hedgerows, we've actually gone out and measured them. There's over 390 kilometers of hedgerows, which in the whole supplies just over 1,000 tons of carbon per year. Standalone trees, again, this was a big task, and the sequestration element was mainly run by a colleague of mine, or 2 colleagues, Joe and Ian, and they've been out and actually physically gone around and measured every single standalone tree on the farm in Lincolnshire, Oxford and Gloucestershire, which is a massive exercise, but again, it's daunting. But now we know where they are, we can base our foundations and go from there. And again, it's a staggering number of 11,000, just over 11,000 trees, which is contributing, again, nearly 800 tons of sequestration of carbon a year, which we in all honesty, we didn't really think about to begin with. And then all of a sudden we thought, well, these trees must be doing something. And then CSS, countryside stewardship, again, all contributes to the sequestration element. And cover crops is something that we have been using quite a lot. It's part of a practice that we've been doing quite all over the years at beeswax. And again, it's just understanding better how that helps the sequestration. From the results that we've seen, it has a really big factor to it all. So once we've had these results, it's what does it do? Because it's nice. We were pleasantly surprised with the result. We didn't think we would be so close to being net zero and also sequestering, which was really good achievement, because it felt like with us as a business, we're doing the right things anyway to begin with, but in terms of carbon anyway. And then so it helped us identify a target. So we are going to be sequester the carbon by 2021. But the biggest thing has been the management decisions on the ground. It's made people think twice about certain aspects of the farming enterprise. So the likes of cultivations. Out of the 3 main ones, cultivations, inorganic nitrogen and fuel, cultivations is probably the one that we can't really control as much as we'd like, purely because of the weather. We're not going to go all no-till, although that is the best practice for soil, and so the best practice for soil and soil health. But our system doesn't really allow for that. So we're not going to shy away from the plough. We'll use it rotationally, but the whole idea has been that we think twice now about what cultivations we use. So it's a lot more educated. And so do we really need to do this? Do we really need to do that? It's all about using the best tool in the right situation. Inorganic fertilizer, as I mentioned, it is the largest contributor. So we're looking at how to reduce our bought-in inorganic nitrogen. And there's a couple of exciting technologies out there. There's a company that we've looked into called N2, and we're looking to utilize our liquid digestate to enrich it with nitrogen fixed from the atmosphere, which is really clever technology using plasma, basically like a lightning bolt in a box. So really exciting. The trouble at the moment is the scalability of the technology, and the feasibility at the moment is not there for us right now. But again, really exciting stuff going forward, and it's an area where we think we could easily cut down on. Alternative fuels, again, looking at different sources. So utilizing the AD plants that we have on the farm, where we've got a project underway at the moment, Project Grace, that's looking into biomethane. So we'll capture the biomethane and then at the first instance try to convert the lorries into biomethane lorries, so we can use that going forward and reduce our reliance on diesel, really. Cover cropping is an area that, like I said, we've been using for quite a while, not only because of carbon, but we just believe it's right for the soil. It's doing everything we want. But again, it's understanding how to use that properly, which I'll go on to in a minute. It's not just a case of, just put some crops in the ground and let it grow. There's a lot of practical work that needs to be done there to make it work. And then we have this thing that we created called the Hall of Shame. So basically, this is based around all the yields within every single field has been analysed, and we come in at a base yield so that we compare it against, and it gives us a percentage difference. So then we can over the years combine all the fields together and give them a league table, so then we know what the top 50 worst performing fields are on the farm, and it allows us then to focus our attention on that to see whether or not is it worth putting those fields into production, or do we again stick it into woodland or other areas that could benefit for us environmentally and also for the carbon side of things. And again, it's part of the natural capital accounting, which I mentioned earlier, my colleagues Joe and Ian are running. It's part of this assets, so knowing what we've got on the ground naturally. And carbon fits into that as well, just to build up this whole natural capital account. And again, it's financial incentive. It's not just all about carbon in the sense of that's what we're heading. It's part of the tool to help us be more diverse within the business itself. So cutting down on nitrogen, cutting down on diesel would help the profitability of the business, because it's an expense that we're reducing. So it's looking at the bigger picture, not just purely thinking, right, well, we're going to cut down on nitrogen because we think it's going to help our carbon footprint. It's part of the bigger picture for us. And then again, public money for public goods. More is going to come out on this. It's very early doors at the moment, but how carbon is definitely going to fit into there somehow. It's just understanding how it will do. And then direct supply as well. Opportunities arising from the private sector, and also just the produce that we're selling. So the challenges that we've faced, there's been many, and it's going to be quite a few going forward as well. But with this all being relatively new, it has been a little bit like staring into a crystal ball and just trying to guess what's going to happen next. And we've been doing a lot of gut feelings, trying to kind of predetermine what's going on. But the whole idea for us is that we need to be prepared. We need to be ready for what's coming around the corner, and something is better than nothing. So we find ourselves in a good position, but trying to understand which way to go has been a very big challenge. And then again, knowing what to do with the information. Well, when we first knew we were so close to, well, we were close to being net zero, and then we realised we were. So the question is that, yes, this is quite a big news story. Do we go for it? What do we do? Would we go public? It was a good PR story, but in essence, we kind of just reserved ourselves, and we've calmed down more the route now, where we're trying to speak to the right people if it's DEFRA and Natural England, just trying to help advise, not necessarily say this is the way it should be done, but just learn from our experiences and hopefully have an influence going forward for the whole agricultural sector. Not saying that the way that we do it is correct, but it's all about it's all about the sharing knowledge and collaboration, which is going to get us moving forward as a sector. The consistency of the tools is a big one when anyone ever talks about carbon. Which tool do you go for? What's going to happen going forward? One tool would be the ideal world. I don't think that is going to happen from the looks of it. It's going to be an amalgamation of three. But again, we need consistency within these tools, because if it does get to, well, when it does get to a point of the financial incentive part, how is this going to be audited? We have to be on the same playing field if we're going to be rewarded financially for this. And again, it's just collecting all aspects of the business. So you'll see in this picture here, our site at Carrington, the glass house in the background. There's no actual footprint that we've come across that will work out in-house strawberry production. So we've gone to Cool Farm Tool, and we're working with them now to create a tool for that specific reason. So it's all about, again, just trying to capture everything on the business, so it gives you a whole farm, a whole estate number, basically. Technology, like as you said, it is going to be the game changer going forward. It's just the feasibility of some of it at the moment. There's some really great ideas out there, but actually practically applying it on the ground doesn't always work, but will, and it is coming. We're just in this limbo phase at the moment for me, which is, I find really frustrating, and I think there's a few others within the sector that also do. Everyone's talking a really, really good talk, but actually when it comes to actually practically applying it, we're just not there. This product doesn't necessarily talk to this product, and it's just connecting all the dots and making it all work together, really, which is the challenge. But again, this is such an exciting time to be in agriculture, and the next 10 years are going to be, they're going to be really, really game changing, really. It's going to be completely different to what it is now. Then practical application, specifically the cover crops area. I mentioned earlier, it's a large contributor to our sequestration, and it could be just a case of, right, well, we're just going to shove everything in cover crops and just let it go. But what we found is that it's not as easy as that. I mean, you can't just shove a cover crop in and expect it to do what you want, and there's a lot of technical science behind it. There's slug controls, there's no when to remove it, and then it's also passing this whole message through to the whole team, because, for example, with cover crops, the drillman this year, I caught him at a bad time when he was unblocking his drill whilst going through a cover cropped area, and he was like, if you ever grow this again, I'm not drilling. So it's making sure we push that knowledge from the top all the way down, so everybody's on the same journey as us, and we understand how things work to make them work practically, basically, because it's all very well and good me creating these numbers and theoretically saying we need to do this, we need to do that, but we need to bring the whole team along the way and also make sure it's working practically on the ground. So just to finish off with, this whole area is constantly evolving. My biggest advice is, if you haven't started, just be prepared and make a start. Something is always better than nothing. And it is all about just taking that leap of faith and just going for it, really. You'll be surprised with the results, I can guarantee that. And it is rewarding, understanding a little bit more in depth. For me, I never thought I would be driving down the fen or anywhere, really, and looking at a plough in the field thinking, oh my God, look at all that carbon going up in the air. But it really does change your mindset. And the whole area needs a lot more structure, and this will only become apparent going forward as things become more structured. But the direction and the collaboration is greatly needed, because there are so many things out there right now that just do one thing great, but then miss a little bit. So if we just got all our heads together, I know it's a little bit naive saying that, but there's areas that we can work with together to make things a lot easier for us all as an industry, really. And then carbon regenerative, sustainable farming, whatever you like to call it, it is a change in mindset for everybody, and it's all about understanding what we can do, what's out there. We're constantly learning and fine-tuning systems to make things right for us. And then finally, with the business productivity and opportunities, it's all about what's right for your business. This whole area is a massive opportunity, and we just need to understand for each individual business what we have, what we can do with it, what markets are out there, and it's just about being flexible within your business, and just grabbing this opportunity by the scruff of the neck and running with it, really. And that's me. So thank you very much for your time. And if there's any questions.
Ed, that was fantastic. That was really inspirational. I kind of, to me, that was quite big news, because I kind of heard the rumours that you were pretty close to net zero, but to see that you're net zero and beyond, that's really big news to me. I think that's fantastic, and on such a large farming estate as well. It's so impressive, and it's actually quite motivational for the rest of the industry. But it's also motivational for young people, I think, who want to come into the industry, because it shows what we can do. It's brilliant. Well done.
Thank you.
What of the sinks, what was the big one? What is the big sink on the estate? Woodland by far. I mean, we've got over just 550 hectares of woodland itself, and that's annually sequestering about 8,000 tons. So yeah, it is the largest sink by far. The annoying part of what I say annoying, it's
tools offer you all different types of analysis. There's one aspect within the Cool Farm tool at the moment that doesn't allow us to analyze what the actual cover crops bring. We can see there's a massive effect, but the actual quantifiable number, the way that the results are given, isn't actually there yet. But we know they have a large factor to it, but understanding what, we're not sure yet. But hopefully they'll change that soon. But yeah, by far the woodland is the biggest sink, along with hedgerows as well. And hedgerows was an interesting one because it's something that we didn't actually, as a last minute addition, because we didn't it kind of passed us by, thinking, well, yeah, do we put them in or not? But then, yeah, to sequester over 1,000 tons of CO2 is something that really needs to be paid attention to.
That's a chunk, isn't it? Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, I like your point about different tools. I mean, are you seeing a move to something like a British standard for this sort of form of accounting? It does worry me a bit that that we've got 2 or 3 different tools, and probably more. I expect there'll be a plethora of these emerging, but it just feels it needs a British standard, or it needs something like that just to make it.
It really does, yeah, and I'm not sure how it will be done with just one tool. That's why I mentioned with the 3 tools, maybe just an amalgamation of using it. But it is the area that is most contested about this whole sector of carbon, is how are we going to get it standardized and consistent. So I do welcome a one tool approach, but I'm a bit skeptical how it would work at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple of questions in the chat, and some of them came in from is this section, but probably good for you as well, editor. So Sean Coates, so to what extent do you think we have to change crops due to climate change, and do you see financial barriers to the switch? So what's Beeswax thinking around the sort of the rotation, the cropping portfolio going forward?
It's something that we talked about, but again, it's part of the learning within the cropping. There's nothing out there at the moment that tells me what a crop of wheat sequesters, a crop of maize sequesters, like properly, that you can just compare it. Because I've had this division that in the future, where we have a cropping planner based on rotation, yes, that will still be an aspect, but then it will also be a case of a cropping rotation based on, well, what is the biggest sequester? How can I sequester the most carbon within a year? So I can see that coming down the line, but when it comes to beeswax and actually thinking about cropping for carbon wise, I wouldn't say we're picking the crops based on that. It's more focused around the cover crop area, being active within, getting cover crops in when we can do, not only for carbon obviously, but for soil health. But that's the direction that we've gone, mainly with the cropping aspect of it, not necessarily looking at specific crops for it, but it will come when we get more information.
Yeah, okay. And then final one before I move on to Tammy, but we'll come back to the other questions that people have put in chat at a sort of general round table at the end. And it's a lovely comment from Alan, actually, Alan Stennett, and which really tunes with me. It sounds like the old arguments for mixed farming. So, given what Isabel was saying and the change, where do you see the landscape moving to in the future, and how do you see the farming model evolve? And I have to say I like Alan's comment, because what I do in robotics with weeding robots, not using herbicides, it's about using old-fashioned tools, but using intelligent things like a steerage hammer. But how do you see the future coming?
I definitely agree. Having a balanced approach, Isabel's comment on not having all your eggs in one basket is definitely the way that we see it. You need to be diverse, cropping livestock into the rotation. I mean, I didn't really mention livestock in my presentation, but we're heavily invested in livestock. We've got nearly 6,000 sheep across Lincolnshire and Oxfordshire, which are crucial to the part of the rotation, and also cattle as well. But there's going to be, it's all about homing in on specific areas of the farms. Like Izzy said again, with the rectangle fields, that seems, we're doing that in areas. We're taking out parts of the field that are not productive, sticking them into environmental features, and increasing the biodiversity of the farm, and is having a whole round balanced approach basically to all sides, production and environment.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, Ed, thanks. Well, I'm going to come back to you at the end if that's all right. But because of time, I'm going to hand now over to Tammy. That was a fantastic introduction from Ed, and to me, it was really big news. Some of that, to see some of that data on such a scale. Without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Tammy. So, Tammy, here you go. Two Elms projects.
Everyone. It's a glorious sunny morning in Greater Lincolnshire. Just take a minute. Hear the skylarks calling. Hear the insects humming. We have a beautiful county, people. So I'm going to give you an intro to the journey towards the Elms tests that we have now started within Greater Lincolnshire. And I'll emphasise one of them goes into Nottinghamshire and Yorkshire. So we're working with our partners across a county boundary at a landscape scale. The most important thing about this slide, and I think everybody should always know who's speaking at them, is I'm born and bred, yellow belly, and I have graded Brussels sprouts, cut collies and cabbages. Notice also wildlife has been a big part of my life ever since I can remember. I work for Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. We're a membership-based charity. We have a lot of members. We have over 100 nature reserves. The important thing to note, and why I'm here today, is those 100 nature reserves equate to about 0.5% of the landmass of Lincolnshire. And I mean from the Humber to the Wash. But we're not alone. There are 46 across the United Kingdom, and we have a national body who represents us also. Within Lincolnshire, it's important to realise we don't just cover the land. We go out to sea to our territorial limit. So we go as far as Dogger Bank out in the North Sea. So what are the policy drivers that you should be aware of in regards to land management across Greater Lincolnshire? In 2018, the government came out with their 25-year environment plan. Now, having worked for a government body and having known how hard it is to get certain documents signed off and published, I was amazed this came out and clearly stated that we needed to do better by the environment and nature. And I welcomed the publication of this plan. It is available on the DEFRA website or government website. The other thing that has happened that has made us have to think about how we manage our land is, of course, as of December 31st, 2020, we came out of the European Union, and we've had to look at our own systems and legislation and policy. And we saw the Agriculture Act and a Fisheries Act come into play last year that underpins basically what government want to see from farming and fisheries. And the third pillar in that story of delivering the 25-year plan is the Environment Bill. Due to COVID, it's been delayed. It'll be reintroduced in the next parliamentary session in autumn. So everything going to plan, it should become an act through royal assent, possibly by the end of this calendar year. And again, the principles of environmental sustainability are written through this, and also things like mandatory biodiversity net gain. So the Environmental Land Management Scheme, ELMS, I am going to call it from now on because it's a big mouthful for a dyslexic kid from Skeg Vegas. This picture below is our reserve at Woodall Spa. We have a runway in the middle of it because this is where Squadron 617 took off from. But what you can see in the background are some of our Lincoln Red pure breed. So we own livestock. It helps us manage our land. We also contract livestock, I should say, as well. So elms, and this is underpinned within the 25-year environment plan. It's then within the Agricultural Act that public money will be for public goods. And everybody keeps hearing this term. So what do they actually mean? Well, it means you've got to look after your water, try to manage your impacts on air, look to mitigate and protect from environmental hazards. So what does that mean? That means flooding or droughts, because let's face it, we're having both all the time.
Tammy, just quickly, there's a problem with your slides. They're not scrolling through.
Are they not?
No, sorry.
So which slide am I on in yours?
It's showing slide 1.
Oh, that's very odd.
Really sorry. You might want to unshare. That's, yeah, we can see who is LWT now. Yeah,
that's really.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll depart again, but I think you're on. You're on track.
Can you see that now, Simon?
Yeah, Environmental Land Management Scheme (brackets elms) close brackets. Slide.
Okay.
10. Yeah, apologies. I'll let you get back to it.
That's fine. Funny old world, technology. There we go. Likes to trip us up every day. And let's face it, it's Friday. So here's the Woodall Spa Place and our Lincoln Reds. So I'll go on to the public money for public goods. So yes, protection from and mitigation of environmental hazards. So we all know that we've had moments of far too much water. All of our drainage boards since Christmas Day have been recording the highest levels of water in their systems since records began. But we also know last year we had moments of drought. So we need to manage those hazards and also adapt to climate change, which is in part of the story that we've just heard from Ed. And wildlife, and bringing wildlife back in all its forms. And another public good relates, particularly considering we've got an area of outstanding natural beauty in the Lincolnshire Wolds. We're also trying to get Heritage Coast designation along the East Lindsey coast. So beauty and heritage and engaging the public through your lands. Natural capital is spoken about extensively nowadays. Basically, it means what you have as a natural resource on your land, be that the species that exist there, the habitats that exist there, how that fits within a wider landscape and what the services are from those connected landscapes and habitats. Your most important assets are soil and water in regards to producing food, but also in regards to the wider environment and the air around you and how clean it is. Those assets deliver certain services. So we all know about various insect species delivering pollination, and Ed's just talked about carbon drawdown. And these are societal benefits that, and you'll all be glad to see that food's still in there. These are societal benefits that are public goods. So the Environmental Land Management Scheme at present is being designed as a 3-tier process. So the tier 1, the simplest level for entry, will be sustainable farming incentive. And you will, although there'll be encouragement to talk to your neighbours about joining the scheme at this level, but you can just join by yourself as a land manager.
Apologies, Tammy, it's still not scrolling. I think you need to go on full screen show. That it's yeah, you need to go on full show.
It was on full show.
Yeah, there's a little button on the bottom of the screen. Looks like that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've been on my screen.
Yeah, it's showing as the.
Is it working now?
No.
Well, chuff me, I've got no idea why that is.
No.
It was working the other day when we tested it.
I know, I'm really sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
don't worry about it. What I'll do is this.
Yeah, or yeah, well, we can see it. It might be easier. We can see the left-hand panel easier than the centre panel. So if you, yeah, if you just go that way, Tammy, that's good. But yeah, for some strange reason, it's not clicking through. But I'll not interrupt anymore. Okay.
Well, I can't see, so
well,
that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Heather, take me out, please. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds a bit extreme, Simon. I'm not sure why, people. My screen isn't sharing. That's very odd. It was the other day. So we'll go with a 2-slide screen. So basically, the sustainable farming incentive is tier 1. Tier 2 is local nature recovery. So within Greater Lincolnshire, the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership will be working to pull together on behalf of all the local planning authorities, the Environment Agency, the NFU, the CLA, a local nature recovery strategy. They have started that process. Some of you may have attended the conference this week, and that will set out local targets that you will need to reflect within your tier 2 applications. Tier 3 is landscape scale recovery, and you will have to work with your neighbours in a clustered approach at a landscape scale. Now, I think it's going to be landscape scale in the current option to apply for a test is over 3,000 hectares, I think, or acres, I can't quite remember. But landscape recovery would be, for instance, the Lincolnshire Wolds is one landscape, the Lincolnshire Fens, the Kesteven Limestone Ridge, the Cover Sands around Gainsborough, Humber Head Levels, and the South Humber Bank and the East Lindsey Coast. So there are various landscapes you could think about. In terms of timing with elms, the launch of the national pilot is due this year. You will be able, as I understand it presently, you will be able to express an interest in being part of that pilot, because it's not going to focus on one location, because DEFRA want to look at different farm types, different locations, different businesses. So I think it'll be a application type process, and it'll run for 3 years. SFI Tier 1 will open next year. The full elms remit, i.e. Tier 2 and Tier 3, will open in 2024. As Isabel said, countryside stewardship will remain open, and you will be able to exit from countryside stewardship into elms in 2024. So the tests and trials themselves, sorry, this is going to be quite hard to read if you're seeing it, but you'll get the presentation afterwards. Basically are focused on 6 themes: land management plans, what advice and guidance will be required, spatial prioritization, how you set the mechanisms at a landscape scale and agree the priorities, working together, what the payments, different payment approaches are, to delivering public goods, and ways you can mechanise the market in public goods. So basically, how can you, as sellers of public goods, have those goods bought? DEFRA might not be the only person or organisation willing to pay for those goods. In regards to the tests and trials, the last report out by DEFRA was September of last year. There were over 60 active at September of last year. 5 had completed because they were in the phase 1 application window. There was a phase 2 application window, which is when we applied and got Greater Lincolnshire ones. 3,000 land managers have inputted so far, and that's via contributing to workshops, surveys, farm walks, one-to-one interviews, a whole variety of ways of engaging with the tests. So the tests within Greater Lincolnshire, and I have got a map, were submitted back in 2019, and then through the calendar year last year. Obviously, with the impacts of COVID, things were complicated, but the application process was an expression of interest. Then you were invited to put in a full application proposal, which was last year, and we had 2 accepted. One in the Humber Head Levels, which is the northwest part of Greater Lincolnshire, going into South Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire, and one in the south of the county, in and around the Lincolnshire Fen and coming off the Kesteven Limestone Ridge. Both are a landscape scale approach. Both want to work with land managers, and both will be looking at how we finance public goods. These tests are being in-kind supported by Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust, so all of my time. DEFRA is funding it. Anglian Water and Affinity Water are funding, along with the Humber Head Levels partnership itself. So that will fund the work, and basically they've started late winter last year. We undertook the recruitment of staff who started this January. We aim to hold the first big workshops in April, and obviously we'll be running them virtually, where hopefully my PowerPoints will work properly. And they'll be completing next year. So on the left, this is the Humber Head Levels, basically Doncaster down here, Scunthorpe's over here. This is the River Humber. It's where the Trent drops in down into the Humber. So this is renowned for peats. And there's quite a lot of very significant, internationally important nature conservation areas here. But of course, there's some really rich farming land. But this area is roughly where Fish Lake flooded. So we also know water is a hazard and an asset in this area. This is the South Lincolnshire Water Partnership area. To the north, we've got Sleaford and Boston, then Spalding, Peterborough down here on the bottom, across to Stamford and Grantham. So that's the area that we'll be focusing in, particularly around the River Glen and the South 40-foot catchment. The Humber Head Levels test, we have to engage with around 100 land managers in the first instance to help prioritise what public goods we should be focusing on in the Humber Head Levels. And then we're going to work with 3 clusters of different land managers. There'll be clusters in the peri-urban area. So that, think about the fact that I just spoke about Doncaster. So if you think about the land edging around Doncaster, that would be classified as peri-urban. Then buffering the international sites. So we're talking about Thorn and Crowle Moor and Hatfield Moor. These are protected peatlands, so land managers potentially in and around there. And the third cluster, basically out in the open farmland. We need a minimum of 30 land managers to engage on a one-to-one basis to help develop and discuss what a land management plan should be for the environmental land management scheme. This will then help us assess from the 30 land management plans what sort of costs it would be at a landscape scale for the Humber Head levels to deliver those priority public goods. So we will be able to use the information and take that up and work out basically a costed assessment for the whole of the Humber Head levels. And then we'll have some idea of what it'll cost to deliver landscape scale recovery. Within South Lincolnshire, again, we'll start with a large workshop engaging a lot of land managers across that area, discussing what public goods means to them and what the priority should be within the South Lincolnshire area. From that group of people, we'll invite applications to join a working group. And what should be noticed, previously under agri-environment schemes, horticulture wasn't allowed to apply, but under ELMS, horticulture will be able to apply to join the scheme. So DEFRA has clearly told us that for the South Lincolnshire area, we need to engage with the horticulture industry as well. We're going to look at basically what measures we need to put in place to deliver public goods there. And most importantly, with this test, we're going to look at how we might create a market for public goods. And yes, ELMS may be one of the buyers, but so may be the water companies, so may be a housing developer. So we're going to look at the intricacies of who might be interested in buying public goods off land managers and how we mechanise such a market. And again, that'll help inform the payment pricing levels for ELMS in regards to DEFRA. Now, if you're in the locations, you'll obviously be interested in getting involved. But even if you're not, we will be basically creating newsletters on what we find in regards to our ELMS test as we go along. So we've created a dedicated inbox for our ELMS test, which is on the screen now. The two people who have already started are Beth Everton and Joe Finlow. Obviously, they've started in a virtual way, but they will be based from our headquarters in Horncastle. And we'll have basically Isabel is sitting on the steering group for both, along with Sean Coots, who also works for LIAT. And other specialists will be supporting us as we go along. And we're right at the start. And now's the time to engage because of the workshops in April. Now, I've been listening to Ed and Isabel, so I'm also going to wrap up so the messages come home from all three of us. There are many opportunities ahead for land managers. Biodiversity net gain through the Environment Bill that will become an act. You need to understand now what you have, where, and what you may be able to deliver net gain. You need to start to understand what the carbon budget is on your farm, like Ed spoke about. Now, he spoke about woodlands and hedgerows being critical for them reaching net zero and going actually beyond net zero. I want to emphasize right tree in right place. And there are habitats that are better than woodland in many ways. So if you're in the peats, re-wetting peatland, I realise it's rich soils, but re-wetting peatland will definitely do amazing things for carbon budgets and will offer you diversification. If you're on the coast, salt marshes are some of the best habitats in the world for sequestering carbon. Even flower-rich species, flower-rich meadows are incredibly important for carbon capture. So it's not just about trees and hedges, it's about all habitats that are ran and managed for their natural services. We don't expect a farmer to know everything. My best advice to anybody right now is know what you have on your land. Get a baseline evidence so you understand it now if you don't already have that. There are tools out there. This website is a link to the Greater Lincolnshire Nature Partnership Environmental Record Centre, where you can basically pull off information about your landholding and around your landholding. It's called LIAT Search. Anybody can access it. It is it costs, I think, 100 or 125 to get all of the data off. Work with your neighbours, because tier 2 and tier 3 will require it, and to some degree tier 1 will. I think if we're going to work towards net zero and we're going to address the biodiversity crisis ahead of us, we all need, and I include we all need, to think about less pesticides and less fertilizers in terms of the chemicals that we're putting on. So if you can, work towards 30% less. And that's because the government have made a commitment that they will have 30% of the land across England in nature's recovery by 2030. Celebrate your successes so the public know the great jobs you're doing in regards to climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. And please, please, please do not feel you are alone and need to know everything. We are here to help you. We are experts in wildlife. You don't necessarily have to be. Give us a call. We can help set this baseline and understand what's coming. Because together, as a true yellow belly, I believe Greater Lincolnshire can deliver this nation's food, we can deliver this nation's water, and we can deliver the greatest nature recovery programme for this nation. We have all of the natural assets around us. We just need to get more clever at working together. Thank you for listening, and over to you. I apologise that technology somehow tripped me up again.
No, it didn't, Tammy. I just want to reassure you, we did see your slides and in there, and your message came across brilliantly well. So I just want to reassure you, and apologies for the gremlins. I don't know what happened.
Fine,
and I'm also, I'm really proud of that. I'm also a yellow belly, as many of you know, and I've also graded sprouts, probably like you. I don't remember seeing you on the other side of the grader, but but yeah. No, that's fantastic. And just on behalf of everybody, thank you to the trust for showing real leadership to get those 2 ELMS pilots, and they are very significant. I know that those areas, I know the Retford area very well, and clearly I live in Boston, so I know the South area very well. And I just think you've got the location perfectly set, and it's great to have them in the county and for you guys to be leading it. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us. And please, what we're trying to do is invite you back to just keep us in touch, because it's very, very important for the future. So some brilliant impacts there. Well done. It's exciting. Right, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, if that's all right. I'm just going to go through them quite quickly. I'm just checking through the chat now, which ones. From Paul Barnes, I thought it's a good one, and you did make a case to this. And Paul's asked a couple of questions, but the one I'm going to take here. So he's saying, I've heard that those who want to sign up to test and trials should not be part of the scheme already. Is this the case? So I've heard.
No, it's not. That's a myth. Right. It's like an urban myth, Paul. Basically, if you're already in a scheme, it doesn't matter that you join the test and trials. Let me be clear, the tests and trials don't actually pay for delivery on, though obviously we will develop the land management plans for those 30 plus land managers, but they don't actually pay for delivery on the ground. Tests and trials are about building together understanding of what the ELMS schemes should involve. So what DEFRA want is information on building blocks. So it doesn't stop you, if you're in any current scheme, it does not stop you from engaging in the tests and trials.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And then from Claire Rose, I was also really intrigued that the pricing model bit, which will be, I think, an output of your trials. So how do you establish a marketplace? And that really is quite exciting, and I'm really interested in that. What's the timelines, Tammy, on that?
So we'll be developing the natural capital methodology over basically the spring of this year into the summer, and we will start discussing prices in that process, obviously, of what the land managers think it'll cost to deliver the public goods. And the overall sort of mechanisation and modelling will be towards the end of this calendar year into 2022.
2022. Okay, so it's live and active, isn't it? And all that will go back to inform policy, I assume, because the policy it's not quite there yet, is it? But it's emerging at pace, and I guess this is going to be a key evidence base for that policy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, DEFRA do not see the tests and trials stopping, even when ELMS is launched. They want ELMS to be adaptive and evolve as they go along. So phase 1 and phase 2 tests and trials are informing the initial foundations of what the 3 tiers may be, but then that will continue to evolve as time goes along and lessons are learned. So this is the first set of lesson learning, really.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks. Right, I'm going to ask Heather to bring back Ed and Isabel, if that's all right. So welcome back. Just a general question there, and again from Paul Barnes, and I'll give this to Ed, Isabel for a start, because I know of the personal interest. So will there be a drive to organic systems, given Tammy's statement about a need to reduce pesticides by 30%?
Thanks, Paul. Hi, Paul. Not that I have heard. So Tammy may disagree. I don't think that's an intention at all, because we must have a robust food system which is as carbon efficient as possible. But that doesn't mean to say that there aren't opportunities for some farmers who wish to look at organic systems. And it's the same as probably like a lot of people in the audience, I've been involved in some consultation on what the tier 3 might look like. And as Tammy said, this feeling of flexibility, and what I was trying to drive home to DEFRA Natural England is the feeling that we know that what we do now isn't quite right. But we don't really know what all the solutions are, and that will come to light as the years go on. So it's really important that the future schemes are flexible and allow whatever adjustments might be needed as new technologies, for example, come through, and we can apply those and it makes something much more efficient, for example.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
I haven't answered the question on organic per se, whether Tammy has something to say.
Yeah.
So there's discussions presently going on in regards to integrated pest management, and having that as part of entering or delivering in tier 1. So that's where it comes in regards to the 30%. That's a percentage that the wildlife trusts have asked for in various consultations to align with government policy around biodiversity crisis. But DEFRA are looking at having within tier 1 integrated pest management as part of the foundation.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thanks, Tommy. And Ed, I'm going to close out in a minute, but perhaps from your perspective, in terms of sort of commercialising some of these opportunities, carbon, biodiversity, net gain, where are you seeing the direction of travel?
Well, it's basically, again, gathering the information, getting your baseline. When it comes to sort of the question from Paul again on the carbon testing, where it needs to be before it's traded, that's the one I think we're referring to. I think, yeah, we just need to find a one test that suits, because at the moment, yeah, we've got Dumas, we've got loss of ignition, and they give you completely different results. So it's how do we go forward with finding a result that actually everyone can relate to is the biggest challenge for me going forward. This is consistency going forward. That's the biggest thing we need to look for.
Yeah, and do you see a carbon market opening up? I mean, there are.
Yeah, definitely. There's the biggest challenge for farmers now and estate owners will be understanding which direction they go, because it's now with all the tools that are available, you can see it coming through now with all the companies that are trying to open different accesses to farmers to get onto the carbon traded market. There's so many now. It's going to be an option to, which one do I go for? Which one offers me the biggest picture? But again, the ones that I've seen so far, they don't give you a full farm approach. It's the ones I've seen are looking at the actual farming practices rather than, the actual sequestration side of things. So there needs to be that, again, I keep on saying it, consistency of everything, because at the moment you're going to be paid for the practices you do on the farm, and then what trees you grow, or salt marshes or peat that you restore. It needs to be the whole thing rather than just jumping into different things all over the place, because it only adds for confusion. If there's too many options, where do we go?
Yeah, because it's not a payment direct for the carbon, is it? It's for the services to hopefully sequester carbon, so promoting, asking you to go to min-till, regenerative ag, and those sorts of things.
And the biggest challenge, well, I say biggest challenge, one area I keep on getting fixed on is the difference between sequestration, which is the annual audit, and then the actual storage. So then how do you separate? There's two different markets there. Are we going to be double counting? Do we focus on one or the other? It's going to be interesting.
It's going to merge quickly, isn't it? I guess. Right, I'm going to one last question, and it's from David May, LIAT Deputy Director. Probably going to direct this at Tommy. So, if you had non-farmed land, common land, that's rich in biodiversity, will you be able to benefit from the changes? Can this support other farmers in the area?
As I understand it, common land will be allowed into elms, especially if it's in a peri-urban area that they're looking at including now as well. So yes, as I understand it presently, it will. And what that could be is, if you work with your neighbours, is the arc from where the biodiversity flows out through networks that you create, either through watercourses, hedgerows, into your neighbouring farms areas. So you could basically look at a local tier 2 local nature recovery network approach.
Brilliant. All right, thanks. And with that, I'm going to close out now. Again, I just thank you, everybody, for joining the session. So those who tuned in, I apologise again for the glitch with Tammy's slides, but particularly thanks to Tammy, Ed and Isabel. I think it's been another fantastic session. And for me, some really big news about 2 Elms pilots, and big news about what's going on at Bezox Tyson, and that you are below net zero. So well done. So that's it. So thank you all, and we'll close out now and look forward to the next session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.